Hello, hello. Dioji here. I've been getting a lot of requests to do a tutorial on Bhops, so I guess I'm gonna try that. I'd like to try putting together more tutorials and tip videos in the future, so if you have anything else you want me to cover, let me know in the comments. But yeah, let's hop into it. So, if you didn't know already, this is what a B-hop looks like. It is performed by touching down one wheel to the ground and jumping and side flipping the moment we land. The main purpose of doing this is to allow us to do a double flip anywhere and with a much more consistent setup than a normal double flip gives us. If you're not familiar with what a double flip is either, essentially it's a mechanic where we touch down some of our wheels for a very short time, allowing us to keep our momentum and get a new flip to give us some additional speed. Now, you may be wondering why we would do a B-hop or a double flip over landing normally and side flipping again. Essentially, we do this because if you land fully, you'll reset your speed to whatever's on your speedometer, which we don't want, as anytime you're in the air, your speedometer is at best equal to your velocity, but in most cases actually slower than your current velocity. By performing B-hops effectively, we can maintain our initial velocity, or sometimes even more, for even longer than a normal jump and side flip would allow us. Now, before we get into learning to B-hop, we need to make sure whatever your control scheme is, whether it's controller or keyboard and mouse, you are following these rules. So obviously, first thing we need is air roll bound. This lets you rotate your car in the air and will let us angle to actually touch down our wheel. Then, in addition, you need to make sure that whatever your brake key is, it is not bound to something you will be touching while you come into contact with the ground. And finally, it should be possible to use the air roll, jump, and flip keys in quick succession or at the same time, as you need to be able to press all of these pretty rapidly in order to do a successful B-hop. If your controls don't currently follow all these rules, you may have a much harder time learning or won't be able to B-hop. So I'd recommend changing your control scheme to something that will. You can try different controls than I have. These definitely aren't the end-all be-all, but if you're looking for controls that have been working for me, these are what I use. I'll also have these in the description below. Okay, now we can finally get into learning how to do a single B-hop. These are typically used as a quick speed boost in between turns, on sloped roads, and especially at the end of maps. I also don't use keyboard and mouse, so I'll be giving tips using a controller overlay, but it should be possible to do any of the movements that you see on keyboard and mouse. In order to do a B-hop, we need to touch down one wheel. This can be any wheel, but it's best to prioritize learning with the front leading tire and in some cases the back trailing tire. When I say your front leading tire, what I mean is if you're drifting to the right, your front left tire should be the one you jump off. And if you're drifting to the left, it would be your front right tire. Now, anytime you're attempting to B-hop, you should drift and have your car turned at least about 30 degrees and up to, I would say, around 75 degrees before jumping into the air. This ensures that your side flips will give you more speed and also keep the controls mostly consistent between B-hops. So to start, we can practice jumping and tilting the car in the air to a position that looks something like this, where if you were to land, you would only land on the one tire at first. Getting this movement down is important and is the basis for doing B-hops. When you land, if you end up bouncing rather than landing directly on your tires, then you're rotating too far. If you land and are touching down with more than one wheel, you are at too shallow of an angle. While you're doing this, make sure that you're holding the air roll key the entire time from when you start trying to air roll until you land. You can get used to holding the air roll all the way up until when you flip, but letting go too early will cause a lot of inconsistencies as your car will start adjusting itself. Once you notice that your car is at the right angle, you can stop moving the stick and wait until you touch the ground while still holding the air roll key. Once you are used to jumping and landing like this, you can attempt to jump right after landing, making sure that you're not touching down any of your other tires before you've jumped again. If you end up touching other wheels to the ground, then you are not correctly timing your jump. Now, finally, we can add a side flip after your jump. If you're doing everything correctly, it should look something like this. Make sure you practice this drifting both directions, as in many cases you will need to be able to do it on a specific side rather than just choosing one that you're comfortable with. And now, if you're feeling adventurous, I'd also recommend learning with the trailing back tire, as this will be useful for doing B-hops off of certain slope surfaces. Again, follow the same steps as before, but with an angle more like this. Now, you may be wondering why we would prefer the leading front tire over other tires in most situations. This is actually because our thrusters will push us back and slow us down if we lean backwards. As you can see here, I use my thrusters when facing backwards, and it slows us down a lot. This would become an issue anytime we use a trailing tire, either the back or the front, or if we use the leading back tire while the angle of our car is less than 45 degrees. Now, saying this, why would we also learn the trailing back tire anyways? This is because when we're landing on a slope that's facing away from our direction of travel, it's actually faster and more consistent to use this tire. As you can see from the end of Lavish Lagoon here, by using my trailing back tire, I don't have to rotate as much, and I also get more leeway on the angle of my car, so it makes it more consistent. Now, for a more niche aspect of mastering B-hops, it's important to understand how the car would act when you jump off of a sloped surface or a wall. You will always gain speed in the perpendicular direction of the slope or wall, so if the slope or wall is facing in the direction that you're traveling, you'll end up gaining speed. Now, while this may seem initially unrelated, this can actually add a lot of speed to your B-hops if you can get the angle of your car close to the limit of what lets you land on your tire rather than bouncing. The game will treat it like you have just jumped off of a sloped surface with a sharp angle, providing a similar speed boost, but for every B-hop that you are doing, even on flat ground. The correct angle that you're aiming for will look something like this. Finally, something you may find counterintuitive. Even though our speedometer is disconnected from what our true speed is, landing on a boost pad while B-hopping will still actually give you more speed. It can be hard to aim for certain boost pads, but landing on them will provide a worthwhile speed boost if you can manage to do it. So, once you've B-hops mostly consistent, or if you're masochistic enough to try and do it without consistency, we can try chaining together B-hops. This is where the biggest strength of B-hops is, as you can maintain a lot of speed for essentially as long as you can chain B-hops rapidly. Anytime you're preparing to begin a B-hop chain, you want to maximize your initial speed before you jump. This typically looks something like a large drift, followed by initiating a second drift, activating the turbo while continuing the drift, then activating the turbo again and finishing the drift. You'll then start a drift and side flip. Then you should end up in a position like this, where you can then set up the B-hop. This will put you back in the same position as before, in which you set up the B-hop again and repeat. Ta-da! Now you can chain B-hops, so it should be as simple as doing this like 100 times and getting the Bone Cavern 2 world record. Kidding, obviously. This step will take a very long time to be consistent with, and a lot of trial and error. When you start, I recommend taking a lot of time between B-hops in the chain to get used to the movement and give your brain time to reset and get comfortable. Slowly, as you improve, you can cut down on the time between B-hops and work on being able to adjust where your car is during the chain. The more you can reduce the time you spend between B-hops, the longer you can stay extremely fast. For example, in the video on the left, I'm doing perfect B-hops, but with much more time in between compared to the video on the right. You'll see that I can fit in not only more B-hops in the same distance, but I also have more speed at the checkpoint and can reach the checkpoint faster. In order to adjust and move your car between B-hops, you will need to let go of air roll after you flip, and then you'll be free to adjust your car in any direction before continuing the chain. Also, when doing these B-hop chains, in addition to having a much more speed, you can also essentially ignore any hazards, as they will only affect you while touching the ground, but since we never adjust to the ground speed, they are negligible, so we can ignore them until we're fully landing on the ground. Finally, let's go over some common issues I've seen or found that maybe make your B-hops slower or harder. Too steep or shallow of an angle when B-hopping. We sort of already covered this, but I just want to reiterate how we go about determining whether we are at the correct angle. If you rotate too far in any direction, we'll bounce and not get a flip. If you're at too shallow of an angle, you will land on more than one tire, or very quickly transition to landing on more than one tire, and it will suck you down to the ground and slow you down. Avoid doing this by trying to angle even more and get closer to the max angle you can land with. Remember that the closer you get to the limit of the angle, the more of a speed boost you will get from the jump itself, so it's worthwhile to try and push. If we don't rotate in the correct direction for your drift angle, you will touch down with 2 tires, and no matter how perfect the rest of your B-hop is, you will lose speed. Losing speed rather than gaining speed. If everything about your B-hop seems to be going correct, but you just seem to not be maintaining or getting as much speed as you should, there could be a few reasons for this. You still have the brake button bound, and you are pressing it while landing on the ground. This doesn't noticeably affect perfect B-hops, but it will penalize you more for imperfect B-hops, and especially if you completely land. You may not be jumping early enough after touching the ground. Not jumping early enough can cause 2 tires to touch the ground, which will cause you to lose a lot of speed, but it may not always be obvious that it happened. You are angling your car and using your thrusters while they are facing backward. This can be solved by either not using the thrusters anytime you would need to air roll backwards, or, more preferably, don't air roll in a way that would cause you to roll backwards at all. In most cases, it's better to have the control available to you, rather than just sending it and hoping that you won't need the thrusters. Slowly rotating too much or too little during a chain. This issue can appear when you start doing longer chains, where the drift angle of your car will keep rotating as you B-hop. This will make it harder to stay consistent throughout a chain. This can be caused by rolling your stick after you've angled your car while still holding air roll. If you're doing something like in these examples with your stick while holding air roll, this will happen. You should focus on keeping your stick in the same position until you are at a correct angle, returning your stick to neutral, and then waiting until you have jumped to move your stick again. Alright, I think that's about all I have to cover for now. If you run into more issues, let me know in the comments. I can try helping out there. Also, if you like this type of content, I would love if you could throw a like or a sub my way. This video definitely takes more effort than my usual content, but if it's actually helpful, then I'll try and make more. But yeah, good luck on getting this mechanic down, and see you in the next video.